Confirmation bias, illustrated in the 2-4-8 game, refers to the human tendency to always try to confirm the hypothesis they have formulated in their head, and neither to see nor to take sufficiently into account the elements of the situation that call into question or invalidate these hypotheses. This confirmation bias is a very common error in human reasoning. The search for confirmatory information is in fact the default option. Indeed, this strategy is cognitively inexpensive. It does not require individuals to invest much mental effort. But how does hypothesis confirmation translate into a negotiation situation? I told you earlier that ideally, negotiators should seek information without any preconceptions. This is exactly where the problem lies. We are rarely, if ever, free of preconceptions or expectations. These preconceptions relate both to the situations we face and to the people that we meet. For example, people often enter negotiation thinking that negotiations are necessarily competitive situations. We call this, remember, the zero-sum bias. Due to this bias, we develop competitive rather than cooperative expectations of negotiation situations. How does these expectations influence the information-seeking process? Quite simply, through the confirmation bias. If I think that a negotiation is a competitive situation, I will tend to look for all the elements in the situation that confirm this hypothesis and not see or perceive the elements that contradict it and that would allow me to see the possibilities of cooperation. Eventually, my attention having been focused on the most competitive aspect of the situation and having obliterated all the cooperative aspects, I will conclude I was right, that indeed the situation is a confronted one. It's a competitive one, and this conclusion will further strengthen my competitive expectation for future negotiations. Competitive expectation can be about the situation itself or negotiation as a concept, but it can also be the result of preconceptions that we have developed about our counterpart. Depending on what we have heard about them from others, or depending, for example, on their gender or previous experiences with them, we will expect some negotiators to be more competitive than others. Think about the people around you, your colleagues, for example, and your expectations about them. You will soon realize that they can vary greatly. You may see some as selfish and competitive. Others you may see as sociable, altruistic, or more cooperative than competitive. These expectations about people influence one's information-seeking behavior. In one of their studies, Van Cleef and his colleagues manipulated their participants' expectation about their counterparts. While half of them thought they were dealing with a competitive negotiator, the other half expected to interact with a cooperative person. The researchers then looked at the types of questions these groups of participants might ask to their counterparts. The results they found are related to confirmation bias. Compared to negotiators who expected to negotiate with a cooperative counterpart, those with negative and competitive expectation asked more competitive questions, such as, will you seek to win the negotiation at my expenses? Or are you inclined to ignore the interest of the other party? And they also asked fewer cooperative questions, such as, will you take my interest into consideration in the discussion? Or are you prepared to make concessions? In sum, our expectations regarding either the situation or the other party bias our perception and lead us to make errors of judgment that support and reinforce the expectations we had formulated at the start.